Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm Ken Edwards, the Sustainability Officer for the City of Delray Beach, and also with us today is Mary Wasney, the Assistant Sustainability Planner. We are very glad to have you join us for the City of Delray Beach Earth Month presentation, and also like to welcome our special guest presenter today, Ryan Snow, the Regional Director of Market and Transformation and Development for the United States Green Building Council. Ryan is a lead accredited professional, has been for the last 20 years, and he holds a lead AP in the building design and construction specialty. Ryan has spearheaded many partnership and educational building efforts that expand green building networks. And also he's very familiar with the city of Delray Beach. In the second part of the presentation today, I'll talk a little bit about that and also give an overview of the LEED certification program. A couple of notes to mention: everyone has been muted for now and chat is off. There will be time for questions at the end of the presentation though. And now I'd like to start off with a short overview of the City of Delray Beach Green Building Ordinance. So the city passed an ordinance last year, and the question is, why is that important? And there are a lot of very good reasons to have a green building ordinance, a lot of good things about green buildings, but the real critical item is in regards to greenhouse gas and greenhouse gas reduction. The city did a inventory using 2019 data, and we found that 44% of emissions in the city came from buildings. So if we are serious about hitting the targets of 50% reduction by 2030 and net zero by 2050, we're going to have to address emissions from buildings along with the other main source of emissions, which is transportation. And why is that important? To address climate change, we're going to have to address those emissions. So the Green Building Ordinance that we passed does apply to the whole city, and it also refers to 4 specific green certification programs. All 4 of these programs are going to give presentations during Earth Month, and today's presentation is by the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design program. So we're very glad to have them with us today. The program or the ordinance has 2 tiers of buildings that it applies to. First tier is from 15,000 square feet to 50,000 square feet, and that's a one building or multiple buildings as a part of a unified development that requires the minimum level of certification, so certified bronze or 1 globe level. And the second tier also applies to the whole city, and this is a requirement for silver level or equivalent, so 2 globes, and that's for 50,000 square foot buildings and larger. A couple of types of buildings that are excluded from the ordinance: historic buildings and many renovations do not have to meet this requirement because those kinds of buildings are already sustainable by nature of conserving materials. The ordinance takes effect on November 1st, 2023, so a few months down the road, and the ordinance has a provision for revisiting it within 2 years. And the ordinance also applies to city projects just like it does any other development. So effects and future considerations of the ordinance: there is an existing ordinance which is going to be expanded to the whole city and add a tier. And we expect that this will significantly increase the number of green buildings in the city and make Delray Beach a center of green building development. Hopefully the city will become known for green buildings and the better characteristics that come along with those kinds of buildings. As I mentioned, there is a 2-year reevaluation period, so that gives us an opportunity to see how the ordinance is working, make any tweaks to improve that, and also gather information on ways that we can improve the ordinance to address things like EV and solar ready provisions. We had a lot of comments during the develop of the ordinance regarding incentives, so we can gather information on what may work best to encourage even more green building, even for those kinds of buildings that's not required. The ordinance is consistent with Florida statute that requires government buildings to obtain a green building certification, and put some more detail on that. And because the ordinance is designed to succeed, it is fairly straightforward and simple ordinance. We expect that there will be no increase in processing time for permits. And so with that very brief overview, our contact information is here, and the presentation is being recorded, so you'll be able to get that in the future. And now I would like to turn it over to Ryan Snow for a presentation on LEED certification program. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kent and Mary, for including USGBC and particularly myself in this conversation. I am so excited to have this conversation. As Kent mentioned, I have spent quite a bit of time in Delray Beach. I have cousins that live up in Boynton Beach, and we always come down there. I've been coming down for about 15 years or so, almost 16 years. So I know your city very well, and it's always great when I can do one of these presentations and know the place that I'm looking at. So just another quick introduction of myself. I am USGBC's regional director in the South, which my team's territory goes from Maryland down to Florida, over to West Texas, and back up through the mountains of Kentucky and West Virginia. So it encompasses about 40% of the population of the U.S., which is sometimes mind-boggling to me. And really, the role of our team is to be a resource in these local communities with outreach and education and partnerships, and supporting stakeholders who are looking to address the sustainability, health, and resilience of their buildings and communities. So just a little bit about USGBC. If you're not familiar, USGBC is a not-for-profit organization. We are headquartered here in Washington, D.C., which is where I live. But our reach is absolutely global. We're a membership-based organization, and I'll talk about that just a little bit later on. But what most people know us for is our LEED rating system, which is what we're going to talk about today. But the USGBC community is really interesting, and I think an opportunity for you all to get involved with that if you're not already. We do have presence in Florida. But it is a diverse group of stakeholders, from real estate, from design, construction, engineering, and other kind of institutional stakeholders, which could be anything from local and state government to healthcare to institutions of higher education, schools. There are a lot of people that are making decisions and shaping our built environment. And so we represent all of those folks. I like to say that we spend 90% of our time inside of buildings, and probably the rest of that 10% where we're not inside of a building, we're going from one building to another. So our built environment has an impact on all of our lives. And so we represent a great constituency of folks who are very much committed to making these places more healthy, efficient, and equitable for all. As an organization, here are some of our priorities of what we're trying to address. This pathway towards decarbonization. A part of that is, of course, electrification, social equity, environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, which we keep on hearing a lot about lately, green finance, human health, net zero, and resilience. So these are all areas where we are looking at the intersection of what we do with our buildings and our communities, and how it kind of ties to these larger global topics and priorities. And we have a part to play in addressing all of them. So I really commend the city of Delray Beach for your leadership in this policy. And just for a bit of context, there are 515 LEED related policies and incentives from state and local governments across the country. 60 of those state and local policies are in the state of Florida. So, over, what is that, over 10% of them. So certainly a lot of leadership that's happening in the state of Florida. So these policies kind of fall into three different categories. One are incentives, which those incentives can be financial or kind of translate to finances. It could be expedited permitting, density bonuses, so on and so forth, or truly financial incentives. Some of them are requirements, which say, hey, if you're over the size of a building or your new construction, then you're going to do a green building standard. Or it could be a requirement internally for that city and its entities to develop their own buildings that way, which we certainly heard about that from Kent. And then the fifth one, which is not frankly popular, you only see 5 of them in the state of Florida, are kind of ones that are like, hey, yeah, you should do this. I wanted to share that there are different types of policies that are out there, and the fact that we definitely applaud Delray Beach for your leadership and contributing to this. So LEED, you may be familiar with it, and we're going to dive into the nuts and bolts of it, but there are almost 3,000 LEED certified buildings in the state of Florida. The state of Florida also has the highest percentage, I think, in the world of cities which are actually certified. So while we talk oftentimes about LEED at that individual building level, LEED really scales, and we can look at neighborhoods, we can look at campuses, and we can look at cities and communities. So we have more in Florida than anywhere else in the world, which is, I feel like every week I'm getting a new notice about a city in Florida which is participating in that program. But there are over 4,000 green building experts and stakeholders and advocates and enthusiasts. These are our members, our LEED credential holders who are in the state of Florida. So there's a vast network that you can tap into to look for case examples, to get expertise and whatnot with supporting your green building needs. We have 240 companies which are headquartered in Florida who are members of USGBC. So I'm also excited to say that on the right side, you see this list of 10 projects which are in the city of Delray Beach, which are all certified under the LEED rating system, which, of course, the Delray Beach Market, very cool new project, was just certified, I believe, at the gold level under LEED version 4. So some great examples, and maybe you have been to some of these buildings. So going a little bit deeper into LEED. What is LEED? LEED is the most widely recognized, widely used green building rating system or green building program in the entire world. LEED is used in 50 states and 180 countries and territories around the world. Every single day, we certify 2.4 million square feet under the LEED rating system. And this equals more than 100,000 commercial projects and institutional projects which are currently participating in the LEED rating system. So a lot of use, and with that, it means LEED is a global standard, and so you're able to kind of compare apples to apples with projects all around the world. Here's one in Peru. So they're building it in Peru, they're building it in Florida, they're building it really everywhere. And so there's this not only a community in Florida, but a community of practice around the world. And so designers and contractors and other professionals are familiar with this rating system, which is great. But we also see a lot of innovation within it of meeting those local markets kind of challenges and opportunities. So ultimately, LEED certification of spaces saves money. We like to save for families and businesses, taxpayers, and also helps to reduce carbon emissions and contribute to healthier environment for the larger community. This is why folks are doing it. It lays out a concise framework for identifying and implementing practical and measurable strategies, whether it's in design, construction, or the operations and maintenance of our buildings. So we'll dive a little more into that. At its heart, there are kind of 2 main components to the LEED rating system. There are prerequisites and there are points. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those also later on. But prerequisites are things that you have to do. and there are prerequisites in the different LEED categories. So you have to do all of the prerequisites in all of those categories. And those are things like meeting minimum energy and water performance, for example, or pollution reduction on the construction site. So these are some things. Oftentimes, frankly, in a lot of places, they are just standard code that you have to meet them. So they're not necessarily a hurdle, but we want to make sure that all buildings are at least meeting a minimum across the board. And then you get to choose your own adventure with the credits and the points that are associated with those credits in the LEED rating system to get your score and achieve LEED certification. So there are different strategies that you can do, and then you get points for them. Those points all add up, and if you have 40 points or above, you're considered LEED certified. But there's a gradation between that. So once you hit 50 points, you get to silver, 60 points, you get to gold, and then above 80 points is at the platinum level. So even within LEED certification, we see differentials between those projects, and we like to reward, of course, those higher levels of certification as well. LEED is ultimately, trying to work for every single type of building use that's out there. We've tried to, people have tried to get us to certify things that are not, necessarily buildings. The joke is always somebody who asked for a LEED certified boat, which we haven't necessarily done that. But LEED should work, and there are plenty of examples of LEED working for all different types of buildings. But primarily, as it relates to this ordinance, it falls under design and construction. So LEED for building design and construction is kind of the core rating system in that space. And new construction and major renovation, kind of adaptation will be the one that will work for probably the majority of your projects. If you're doing a core and shell development, of course, there are things that you don't do in a core and shell project that you would do if you're doing a full build out of that. So we have these different adaptations underneath our core and shell: schools, retail, data centers, warehouse and distribution centers, hospitality, and healthcare, to help to recognize the nuances and differences between these building types, and make the rating system work for everything under there. LEED can also be used for residential, and so in the kind of middle column, you see LEED for residential, and it can work for single family, multifamily, and kind of multifamily core and shell homes. So wanted you to know that there are all these different rating systems are out there. Those are primarily, I think, the ones that relate to this ordinance. But there is a lot more information on our website. If you just simply type into Google, the great Google machine, LEED rating system selection guidance, it'll take you to this page to kind of outline all of that. And of course, our team is happy to help you. So if you happen to have a mixed use development that's a school and light manufacturing and retail and I don't know what else you want to put in there, a whole bunch of different use types, and you're like, I don't know which one to use. We can certainly help you with those cases, but far and wide, you should be able to use this guidance to pick the right rating system for your needs. But we're always happy to help. Worth noting, in addition to the prerequisites and the credits, there are minimum program requirements, and I don't think this is going to be a problem for anybody, but I just want to make sure that you're aware. It has to be essentially a building in a permanent location. It can't be on existing land. It can't be something speculative, say, hey, we're going to design this over here, and we might put it here or there. It has to be in an actual location. You have to have a reasonable LEED boundary. So, for example, if you have a 1,000,000 square foot building, but you're only going to carve out like one section of it and kind of forget about some other parts, that might not be a reasonable boundary for that building. So we want to look and make sure that all of the systems and all of those things are included within that boundary, but there is some flexibility within that. And then the last one is complying with the project size, just meeting a minimum size for that building. It's not a 100 square foot space, for example. So those are all pretty simple, but just to know about those minimum requirements. Diving a little bit deeper into the LEED rating system itself, the core rating systems are broken out into these credit categories. So you have location and transportation, sustainable sites, water efficiency, energy and atmosphere, materials and resources, and indoor environmental quality. There's also a section for innovation and design. So what does this mean? Location and transportation is where your building is situated and how it connects to the broader community and transportation networks around that building. We want to reduce, single occupancy vehicles and try to incentivize the use of anything from buses and mass transportation to bicycles to our own feet, and also connect to kind of common resources. If you have to run to the grocery store to different amenities, that you can actually do that and not have to take a single occupancy vehicle. Knowing that Delray Beach is a very walkable community, that this is probably an area where a lot of projects will easily get points there. Sustainable sites is essentially the landscape around that building and the site itself. So it's looking at ecosystem resources, urban heat island effects, light pollution, all of these things that are attributed to the landscapes and hardscapes of our building. Water efficiency, pretty self-explanatory, reducing water use through flush and flow fixtures, through systems in that building. Energy and atmosphere. Certainly, there's a lot here, and we'll see that this is probably the biggest category of points where you can get LEED. But we want to make sure that the building itself, the envelope of that building, and the kind of situation of that building is going to optimize the performance from the base, and then the systems that are put in that building are working efficiently, that we're tracking and metering and whatnot, the use of energy, and then lastly is kind of green power, if you will, whether that's on-site or being purchased through RECs or off the grid. The other side of this, and that's why we have atmosphere in there, is strategies to reduce ozone depleting materials and whatnot in your mechanical systems. Materials and resources is all about the stuff that goes into that building, making sure that we have products that are and resources that are good for the environment, but also things like construction waste management, ensuring that the building is set up so that in design side, so that there's proper storage and whatnot for a waste diversion program and managing all of that. Indoor environmental quality is, of course, indoor air quality. This is reducing toxins in the building from the materials that we use, bringing in fresh air, but also addressing thermal comfort, the heat and humidity in that space, the controllability of systems, as well as access to high quality daylight and access to views to the outside. And then last is this section on innovation and design. This is really a catch-all. This is a place where if you go above and beyond any of the thresholds that are in LEED, you can get additional points. Or if you do something that's not in the LEED rating system that you think is worthy of a point, you can get points through that. We have a whole library of innovation points that other people have done, and you can kind of pick and choose from those. We also have some pilot credits, which allow you to try new things. So, for example, we have 3 different pilot credits on social equity in the built environment. Another one that people love is the bird collision credits, which are a design strategy to protect birds and wildlife. So, I spoke before that there are prerequisites and credits. Most of the credit categories, which we just went through, that's location and transportation, energy and atmosphere, so on and so forth, they have prerequisites and they have credits. So under each one of these, there's the prerequisite, which is kind of the intent. What are you trying to do? What is this credit or this prerequisite asking for you to do? And then there are options or cases that you can choose from to meet that intent or meet that prerequisite or credit. And then there are the requirements to kind of meet that threshold and requirements for how you document and say, yes, I did this. And so those are the kind of structures underneath, and it's frankly the same for prerequisites and credits, with one difference being that you have to do all of the prerequisites. Credits are a bit of choose your own adventure to get your points. So point distribution across the LEED rating system falls into these different categories. And as I said before, the majority of the points that you're going to be able to get are in energy and atmosphere. So there are a lot of other opportunities here. Kent had mentioned, buildings themselves are one of the ways to address kind of paths towards decarbonization and addressing climate change, and transportation was the other. Well, what you do with your building and how you situate your building within that community will contribute to those transportation impacts as well. So we look at this from a very holistic perspective. So before we go a little bit more into the rating system itself and how buildings get certified, I do want to also mention our sister organization, which is called Green Business Certification Inc., or GBCI, much easier to say. GBCI certifies buildings and credentials people based off of the LEED rating system, which USGBC created. GBCI also certifies buildings and credentials people for other rating systems. So we have rating systems for zero waste, such as the TRUE rating system, and ones for sustainable sites. The WELL rating system, which are our partners at the International Well Building Institute. GBCI also does certification for that. So there's a symbiotic relationship between these organizations, and wanted you to be aware of GBCI. So the basic certification process is you want to start out early. You want to get your team on board. You want to then register your project with the intent to certify with LEED. So, you're getting that team together, setting those goals early on. It's extremely important to do that. And then when you register, then you get access to the tools and resources to take you through this process. In the design side, those early design decisions will have a big impact on your project, on project costs, and frankly, the ability to meet the goals that you want. So really getting folks on board early on and figuring out opportunities and your goals in that early design phase will set you up for success, whether it's financially or with achieving your LEED certification. And then you move into construction, and then ultimately on to certification. So there's kind of the bigger side of this of like, how do you organize your team and how do you go through any green building project? But when it comes to LEED and you're moving in that pathway towards certification, there are a couple of different paths that you can take. As I said, you first register your project, which says it's your intent to certify. Then when you're going towards certification, there's documentation that you do through our LEED online system. And there are design credits and there are construction credits. Some of those you can start to document right early on, and then other ones you have to do as construction is completed. You can do a combined review and submit all of your credits and all of your documentation at one time. Or you can split that review into a design submittal and a construction submittal. Although the price of certification for a combined review is a little bit less because you're doing that all at once. So there's some efficiencies on our end, frankly. A lot of project teams like to do the split review because they can lock in those credits on the design side and have a good sense of what they're going to get, and those get checked off. And then they start working on the construction side. And so they know, if there's other strategies or things that they need to be aware of, they can work on that on the construction side. So people, like to do it both ways, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware that you could submit everything at once, or you could break it out into design and construction. Once you go through that, and our GBCI team will review and go back to you if there's questions or clarifications and whatnot. You'll accept your certification and accept the credits that were awarded. And then the fun part comes. That's usually when myself and my team come out and we celebrate your certification with a LEED plaque ceremony and all of these different things to talk about what you've achieved. And we'd love to share those stories because then it shows other people what they can do in their buildings. So that's the pathway for certification. Some tools you need to know about. There is extensive documentation and guidance on the LEED rating systems. You can buy a physical book. You can get it online. There's also a credit directory where you can see all of these things. We have LEED Online, which is the management tool that you'll go through. And then USGBC and gbci.org have a lot of other resources, whether those are case studies in our directory. And I see Lexi from our team is on, and she's been helping us with writing up some of these different case studies in Florida. You can see who else has done it. What have they done? What are buildings that are like yours? But there's also a lot of education that's out there. We have an entire online education directory that you can access. Worth noting also that if you're doing multiple buildings, say in a campus situation, or you're doing buildings where there's a lot of similarities between them, and maybe you're a speculative developer. Or we see this a lot in retail, for example, where you're building a similar building multiple times. We also have a volume program to get some of those efficiencies. So we can talk to you more about that, but wanted you to be aware. So the LEED rating system, here's an example of some of the checklists. You can see how these all play out. There are different strategies or different credits that are under each of these credit categories, in some cases prerequisites, and you work towards documenting them, and then for each one you can get different numbers of points. The LEED Online tool is there to help you manage that. We are constantly making updates. We had a big update to that last year. We're talking about where we're going in the future to make this a more easy to use and valuable resource in and of itself. Going through this process and documenting, there is paperwork involved, certainly, but we like to think of the GBCI certification team as a partner on the project. By providing this information and them going through it, they can actually catch things and find opportunities. It gives them a level of transparency and support for your teams, and they're there to help you to achieve those achieve those certifications. Another tool that I want to make sure everybody is aware of is something called ARC. Every building that is in the LEED rating system has access to this ARC performance platform. So if you've registered or certified a project, you can log into LEED Online and use that same credential in the ARC system, and your project should show up if you're part of that project team. It can also be used by non-LEED projects. So if I know this ordinance allows for other rating systems. If you're doing those, you can still use this. If you're not doing a rating system at all, you have an older building, you can still use this ARC platform as a way to benchmark your performance. So you put in actual data around energy, water, waste, transportation, and human experience. So this is your utility bills. It is a waste audit. It's a simple transportation survey that's run through the system. It's a simple survey of how people feel in that space for human experience, and some data points collected through indoor air quality testing. You can put those in, and it will give you a score and benchmark you against a global average of buildings like yours, as well as a local average. It'll also kind of give you a sense of where you would stack up for certification. So this can become a way to certify your building under what's called LEED for existing buildings, operations and maintenance. Operations and maintenance existing buildings. And it also is a way to recertify a building if you were certified under an older system. But it's also just a really great tool that you can use to monitor your ongoing performance, because that's where the rubber hits the road. It's not when you kind of design and construct the building. There's a lot of impacts from there. But why do you do that? It's because you want those operational savings. This ARC platform will help you to do that. You can also put in your own kind of benchmarks. If your organization, or in this case, the city, is saying, hey, we want to be carbon neutral by 2050, was it? You can put in a target and actually assess your entire portfolio and how you're moving towards that target. So there's a lot of other kind of reporting features and cool things that are available in that. Also, once your building is certified and you have at least 1 year of data, you may be eligible for what's called LEED Zero certification. LEED Zero comes in a couple of different flavors. You can be LEED Zero energy, LEED Zero carbon, LEED Zero water, or LEED Zero waste. This is a fairly new system, and frankly, it's a really high bar. But we are excited about people moving towards carbon neutrality or even waste neutrality, water neutrality, and want to make sure that you're aware of that system. So we're wrapping up, and I want to talk a little bit about the cost and values of LEED. And LEED is used by companies and institutions and organizations all around the world, and there's a reason for that. It's because it is a global standard. It's globally recognized, and you have frankly a large network of people who have experience with this, and LEED is created for the market by the market. We're actually moving into LEED version 5 right now, and it's early developments around that. And we have hundreds and hundreds of volunteers who are working to create that system based off of their own experience. we're using the experience of other projects that are out there. We're looking at global trends that are out there in real estate, in design, construction, and operations, as well as kind of global market trends or issues that we're trying to address through that rating system. So there's a lot of input that comes through a consensus-based process for that. So that's why people like it. But I like to dispel the myth that to do a green building, it always has to cost more. After almost over 25 years of doing LEED, we've kind of continually seen that a lot of people are saying that the premium to do a LEED certified project is 1 to 3% above not doing a green project. Part of the reason for that is if you start early and you set those goals and you have a team that is committed to doing it, they are solving problems, and they're actually not only able to save on operational costs during design and construction, or from their design and construction, but they're actually able to, in many ways, drive down upfront capital costs because of synergies that they find through that process. So of course we see that the outcomes of this are reduced operating costs, which is easily quantifiable. There's also other soft costs like lower employee absenteeism and turnover in LEED buildings versus non-LEED buildings. In schools, students they show they got a good healthy space. They perform better on tests. So no matter who's in that building, they are your primary reason for having that building in the first place. So if they feel better, if they're more comfortable, they're more productive in whatever they're doing, whether it's making widgets or taking a test or recovering in a hospital. There is a invaluable kind of outcome to that. From the real estate side, we're seeing higher resale values, less time for buildings to be either leased or purchased on the market, and ultimately reduced risk, and that'll tie into the resilience of it. So that integrative process, thinking early, setting your goals is absolutely critical to getting success, not only on delivering a green project, but reducing those costs and achieving those long-term values. Many of the decisions that are made pay for themselves in 8 years or less. So the return on investment is certainly there in a lot of projects, particularly for longer term property holders. In this case, it's an institution in Texas. So all that great stuff to say, yeah, well, Ryan, will you just tell me how much it's going to cost? I can tell you what the costs are from USGBC side, and it's all on our website. And here's a snapshot of that. There is a cost to register your project, and there's a cost to go through the certification and have that third party review. A few things to keep in mind is that if you are a member of USGBC, there's a discounted rate for that. So that's one of the benefits of membership. And then there is, as I said, there's a registration cost and then a certification cost. I mentioned before, you can do a combined review or a split review. And yeah, you can save a little bit of money on that combined review, but like I said, a lot of people like the split review because it gives them some assurances. And for building design and construction, our pricing, which this actually goes into effect on May 1st, starting depending on your building size and your membership status, it starts at about just over 5 cents per square foot. So that can give you some ideas of those costs. And it's all on the website from that side. What we're seeing though is that the small increased cost for doing a green project and going through certification is really minuscule insofar as the paybacks that folks get. There are a lot of corporations, particularly, that are saying, yes, we're going to do this. They're committing to this. Global brands are doing this, and you're seeing that trickle down to a lot of local institutions and whatnot that are also agreeing to do this. So we're happy to see that people are making good decisions around the investment that they make in their buildings. From the real estate side, and these are some slides that came out just about a year and a half ago from a study from Cushman and Wakefield. They are consistently achieving higher rents on projects which are LEED certified versus ones which are not certified, to the tune of over 11% higher premiums on those rents. They've also seen that their lead assets have a higher sales price when they go to sell those buildings. They're valued higher at the tune of 21.4% above average market rates. And then this is a really interesting one, is that Class A urban offices are generating a 25% per square foot premium over non-certified buildings. And then in suburban areas, because there's just not as many options, or there's not as many lead projects in suburban areas, they're actually commanding over 40% premium in suburban offices. Now, this one just totally blows my mind, is that a Class B office is actually getting the highest premium. In some cases, Cushman and Wakefield is seeing 77.5% premium lease rates for their Class B office spaces compared to non-certified spaces. So, I mean, right there, operating costs, yes, you're going to save there, but the valuation of your real estate asset is definitely a lot more. So we're going to kind of move towards wrapping some of this up, but the last kind of value that people see in actually getting certified is that it reduces risk. There's a level of quality control that's involved with this, and an assurance because of that transparent global standards that the building is being certified against. So people know what they're getting, and they have an expectation for that. The other thing that we're seeing, and this is a bit I think probably related and relevant in Florida, despite the fact that the picture is from Chicago, is that resilience is an increasingly important topic within green building and incorporated into LEED. We're seeing that the systems that are more dependable, utilizing things like solar and other systems, buildings that have invested in their envelope, so that you have what we call passive survivability. If the power goes out, you're not going to freeze or cook in that building if you don't have AC or heating, depending on where you are. All of these things that are kind of inherent within green buildings are actually adding to their resilience. So I want to point that out because it's certainly a big part of the conversation there. So wrapping up, there's a lot of benefits to being involved with the green building industry. We welcome you, if you're not already a member, to join USGBC as a member, or just get involved, show up at our events. There's a lot of things. The Green Build Conference is coming up in September here in Washington, D.C. So a lot of opportunities to connect with this broader green building community. But as a member, if you're doing LEED and you're going to be doing multiple projects, you can get discounts on your registration, on your certification, that easily pay for the membership. But you also get other member benefits, such as discounts on education, the Green Build Conference that I mentioned, and other kind of exclusive benefits there. So just a shameless plug that that's some ways to maximize the benefit. I will say that one of the most important things that anybody in the building industry can do, if they're looking at green building, is to educate themselves, to learn about what are the strategies, what are the opportunities, what are things that other people have done, and really, if you're a building owner, know what questions to ask your design team, know what questions to ask your construction team, know enough about this that you can ask those hard questions and advocate for yourself, that you can get what you want out of that. And then also make sure that your teams, whether it's the architecture team, the engineering team, the construction team, make sure that they have that education. They have that, if they, even if they don't have direct experience in this, if they have a baseline knowledge of what they're trying to accomplish, it's very important from education. You can, of course, get credentials. At a baseline, you can get what's called a LEED Green Associate, but then there's a slew of kind of higher credentials based off of the different versions of LEED that you may want to consider to kind of ensure your knowledge around this. But also, at a baseline level, you can get 1 point if you have a LEED AP on your project. But having people who have these credentials to support your projects means that they understand what they're going through, and they understand the strategies. So it's an important thing to look for project team members who have these credentials. So we invite you to get involved with us. And I'd say that right there in Florida, we have a lot of, as I mentioned, the 4,000 people that are on the ground that are steeped in the green building industry. They're a great resource. They know, the local context and whatnot. This is actually a picture that I took up in Bradenton just a few months ago with some LEED Zero homes that are being developed there by a developer. Um, uh, so lots of innovation and exciting things happening in Florida. So I'm going to take a pause and turn it over to Kent and Mary for any questions that may be coming through. We have about 15 minutes for Q&A.
Okay. Fantastic, Ryan. Really appreciate all that detail. And Mary, can you explain how we're going to handle the Q&A session?
Sure. I just gave everybody permission to talk, turn your mics on, unmute yourself, and if you'd like to show your face, you can turn your camera on also. But go ahead and you guys can just jump in with any questions you might have.
So we want to give the audience an opportunity. I do have a couple of questions, but if anyone does have one, please jump in. Okay, well, I'll get the ball rolling. There were a lot of things in the presentation that really jumped out, so I learned a lot. I'm sure we all did. But looking at specific credits, because that's one of the ways that I hope we're going to be a leader and the community is going to focus on some of the specific credits and get a lot of value out of them. I noted the habitat, the birds and wildlife credit. Can you talk a little bit about how that credit works and some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So people love that one. It's actually one of our pilot credits. It's kind of created from the Green Building, and somebody said, "Hey, we tried this on a project." Now I can't remember the name of it. It's the Javits Center up in Brooklyn, in New York. They actually went after this credit because they have a large building and they were noticing that particularly if they've got electric glass and things like that, that unfortunately birds don't see that glass and they think they can fly through it and then it's killing birds. So it's everything from how to address that to ways that if you've got kind of birds roosting on your roof, how do you design that building so that they can actually, when they're learning to fly, they don't just fly off, and fall to the ground. Uh, it's, People love that credit, so I like to bring it up. It's not one of the core credits that's in LEED, but that is one of them. Under the sustainable sites categories, there's a lot of aspects to those credits, which also are protecting habitat, um, protecting open space, rainwater management, so on and so forth. The light pollution credit, for example, really is all about migrating birds and bats and different things. In addition to just making it so you can see the stars and not have your neighbors' lights shining in your windows. So there's a lot of benefits on those.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to be looking into that, even though it's still in the library development. I think that will tie in with some of our other habitat uh, restoration and enhancement projects. Anybody else have a question?
Interested to know
You're kind of cutting out a little bit, Ryan, at least with me.
Okay. Oh, can you hear me better now?
I can hear you. You're a little low.
Okay. I'll talk loud. I'm not sure what's going on with my connection, but it is kind of freezing a bit. Um, I'd be interested to know if anybody on the call has worked on a LEED project, or even been to one of these projects in Delray Beach that is LEED certified. Anybody have experience?
Sure, I've been to a couple of them. The first one that I am most familiar with, though, was when I worked in Key West, the uh, Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary office, and right on the Key West Harbor was LEED Silver certified. So, and was actually there at the end of that project, and as it was going through certification. So, they had gray water and had a lot of natural lighting that was used, native vegetation on the site. It was a very nice site.
Somebody just came off mute. See.
I have a question. Jim Bell with the City of Boca. Do you have, or you mentioned that you guys pay attention, LEED, you pay attention to trends. I mean, I keep hearing about trends about pollinators are, bees and other kind of pollinators. We're losing that and it's becoming a problem. I don't know, do you see that there could be opportunities for the points to be basically increased for promoting that kind of habitat, along with obviously wildlife habitat and things like that, based on trends?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I believe that there have been examples where innovation credits or maybe pilot credits. I don't know all the pilot credits because they change, but I know that they're, and going back to that Javits Center, and there's also very famously the city of Chicago, Mayor Daley put habitat on the roof of City Hall and actually produced his own honey, and was trying to promote more of that, specifically because of pollinators. It's kind of inherent within what we call the sustainable sites category. And I have the credit library up here. You can see some of these things, but protecting and restoring habitat is one of the site categories. Open space, some of these other things. But when you're looking at the site, utilizing native vegetation or naturalized vegetation, which oftentimes provides habitat for animals, also reduces your water use because they're plants that you don't have to water, you don't have to use pesticides. All these things are kind of inherent within LEED, and promote that. I will also say we have another rating system that's just called sites. It's not for buildings, it's actually for everything except for the building. It's for those naturalized areas, and those certainly the sites system gets even more so into some of these things. But the two systems work in congruency with each other. So yeah, certainly habitat protection and creating those benefits for wildlife is something that we look at. And I'd have to honestly look and see what precedent there is for kind of getting credit for kind of pollinator gardens and things like that. But I know oftentimes when I go to a LEED building, it's just inherent within the landscape. And I appreciate these questions because I also did a guerrilla garden outside of my house and have a pollinator garden that I created. So you're right up my alley.
Do you have a category though where it says create habitat? I see you have this one here, protect, restore habitat. Is there an actual category called create a habitat?
Well, there's a couple of ways that that you can do that, and if you drill down, one is on-site restoration. That's the idea, that you're going to be disturbing that site, but in some cases, you're going to be disturbing that site. How do you minimize that disturbance? But oftentimes bringing back the habitat that's there. So restoration, the idea here is yeah, you're creating those habitats. So it is there. There's also another option. Remember I said there's different options, and so you can do that on the actual site. But there's another one that's I think kind of interesting, that you're actually supporting another organization that is creating habitat or protecting habitat, conservation organizations. So there's a lot of projects, particularly in dense urban areas, where there is no site. It's built right up to the lot line. So there's very little that you can do. But if this is something that's important to the organization, we have a way to kind of incentivize and say, hey, we can't do it on our site, but we are going to contribute to another organization that is doing land trusting or other types of kind of ecosystem creation and restoration.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, anybody else from the guest side have another question? I do have one, and we don't have a whole lot of time left, so I'd like to give an opportunity for everyone. But I don't mind going ahead. I noted with great interest, and we talked earlier about the resilience credits. Again, thinking of ways that we can reach out to general community that may not be real familiar with construction techniques or see how green buildings really pertain to their lives. I mean, as climate change becomes more and more apparent and impacts us, that resilience credit I really look to. Can you talk a little bit more about types of ways that credits can be gotten for resilience?
Yeah, so resilience is such in many ways, there's some generalities that we can say, and then it's very specific to the location, right? So resilience in Florida looks very different, say, than out west, where they're worried about fires in Florida, as you well know from just a few weeks ago, or I guess last week even. It's water. So what resilience looks like is very different, and you can even expand that to say things like economic resilience or social resilience, particularly the pandemic. There's so many ways we can do that. So from a general perspective, reducing reducing the need for systems and using passive systems for heating and cooling is certainly going to reduce your energy use and help with that performance within LEED and get you credits there. But it's also a strategy for resilience, right? So I talked about passive survivability. What you do with your site, doing these site assessments and the things that I have up here, rainwater management, all of those things can help with resilience at that specific site level and controlling flooding and runoff and whatnot. So it's just, certainly the site has a lot to do with that. The connectivity to the community from a social resilience perspective. If systems shut down, like how can people take care of each other? How can they get connected to those resources in their community? That's incentivized through LEED. We can think about resilience from the perspective of the global pandemic that we just went through. LEED incentivizes having good fresh air in the space, actually cleaning that air, making sure that you have a high quality space from a health perspective. And so that health resilience is kind of inherent within LEED as well. So there's a lot of different angles. It's LEED is not necessarily just a system to certify resilience, but the strategies that are used within LEED oftentimes are to kind of do double duty, if you will, in addressing resilience. And we do have some different pilot credits and things like that that are even more specific to resilience. And then let me show you. We have a whole section on our website that does talk about resilience and some of these things there. So all the way from the policy level through what you're doing on your project, so on and so forth. So lots of good resources.
Fantastic. Yeah, I see that as being a really good way to help the general community understand that this is not just a nice kind of program. This is really nuts and bolts, quality of life and preparation, in improving that living space. So I'll give a last call for any questions from the audience before we wrap up. Really appreciate Ryan being here today, and many thanks to USGBC and Lee for participating in our Earth Month activity.
You could just
And
type
if-
in Ryan P. Snow, USGBC, and my stuff comes up, and you can shoot me an email there, or just rsnow@usgbc.org. Easy way to get a hold of me. I realized I didn't have a closing slide with that on there, but feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. We would love to help you through. And congratulations again to the city.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and wrap up, and with wishing everyone a happy Earth Day.